Welcome to the Awakened Woman podcast, where we delve into the inspiring stories of individuals who have overcome adversity and transformed their lives. Today, I'm with Ella, who is a human design and relationship mentor. Ella is on a mission to help women step into their most authentic and thriving self, where they can cultivate and nurture deeply intimate relationships. Because we are all wired for connection in the end, and yet we are not taught how to do this. So important. So, human connection and relationships are the foundation of life and a powerful mirror into the depths of ourselves. And Ella has had spent the last decade traveling the world, immersing herself in holistic practices and peeling back the layers of her own human experiences to be able to share this with the world as embodied wisdom. How amazing this journey and this mission that you are on, Ella. So beautiful and so grateful to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I mean, to have a space to really share this living experience is what lights me up. And I'm just, so excited to talk about these topics that we really need to spread and share with the world because they are just so powerful.
Deeply connect with that. And that's why we are both here, because we are so passionate about these topics. And I was saying to Ella before we started recording, and even when we touched base before the podcast, when I was starting to get to know her, that I myself don't really know much about human design. And I would love to explore more that topic, because I know it helps to rediscover parts of ourselves or find more understanding and connection of those parts of our human nature, why we are the way we are. So it has a lot. It has similarities with psychology, Ella, human design.
It does really connect to the psychology of who we are. And I mean, human design comes from a combination of different things. So we have astrology, we have quantum physics, we have the Kabbalah, we have the Chinese Book of Changes, which is called the I Ching, the Hindu chakra system. And when all of these come together, it creates a blueprint of who we are. And this is really that pure essence that we were born as before the conditioning of the world, before we shape our reality based on our external circumstances. So human design for me has been really such a powerful tool and a catalyst for coming back to me and realizing that I am perfect exactly as I am, and I don't need to be anything other than that. So it's really this I just get to be me, wow, nothing more, nothing else. That's it. So yeah, it's so beautiful, and I think it really does tie in with psychology when we can use that as another tool to understanding ourselves based on the conditioning that we take on after we're born, because we're just such pure beings from the moment we enter into this world, and we're here to have human experiences, and we're here to kind of shape our lives in all of these different ways. So
Wow.
yeah, I really love bringing together human design, psychology, somatics of the body to really bring together this holistic perspective of how we can live in the most harmonious way, how we can come back to ourselves.
Wow, this is so beautiful, and is when you were talking and just giving this beautiful explanation, and so powerful, by the way. I was thinking that I'm coming up with like a new program, and when I was thinking about the program, I was like, it's so interesting that as babies and kids, we are so connected with this full expression of who we are, with our core being, where with our true essence. And at some point in our childhood, this programming this conditioning, it starts coming into place, and we start disconnecting ourselves from who we really are. So adulting is coming back to that connection, and like, if you put it that way, it's coming back to being kids again, in the sense of reconnecting with our most expressive side, our most authentic, loving, powerful self. So I love that you say it's really coming back with who we really are, instead of fixing ourselves or becoming someone we are not. It's just actually peeling the layers that are stopping us from accessing this amazing, powerful, capable, limitless being that we are. So thank you so much for that. So this takes me to this question then. So I would love you to take us to that pivotal moment in your life that inspired you to embark on your journey, that led you to where you are now.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, if I look at my whole life, it really is like, how can I understand like where I've been and where I've come to now, and how can I use that to share with the world? And really, I shared with you that like living by example is one of my missions, and it's so easy because it's like I just get to be, and I don't have to prove myself to anyone. I just get to show up authentically. And I'm looking back at my childhood and growing up. I was quite like a free and adventurous child. I grew up in a very small town, and I was able to express myself very creatively. Nature was my background, and I was really like quite a social butterfly. So I adapted to all of these different situations. I could fit in wherever I was. And now I see, like, now the understanding I have of human design, I'm like, I have an open identity center, which means that I essentially become the people that I spend my time with. And so I look back at all of these different sort of like, characters I got to play and versions of myself I got to be. I was the art student. I was the photographer. I was the corporate saleswoman. I was at the fashion show. I was on the construction site, like all of these things, like actually. And then it's like, okay, so exploration is such a big part of my life. And for those of you who know human design, and if you don't, like, I'm sure this will be an inquiry to start looking into it. But we have these profile lines, and they are the characters that we get to sort of play out. They're kind of archetypes that we can call upon. And so I have a 6 line, which is really about experiential learning, and then integrating that into embodied wisdom. So for me and anyone else who is also a 3 line, you really carry this quality of experiential learning. So it's like, it's part of your DNA to try things out, to make mistakes, and then to share that experience. So I feel like it's always been a part of me. And being from New Zealand, it's a very small, isolated country at the bottom of the world. So I was like, okay, I need to go on an adventure. I need to immerse myself in different cultures. Like, I need to connect with people in the world so that I can have that mirror and that reflection of like, who am I, by understanding how I operate and interact with people around me. So having that reflection in so many different ways allowed me to really evolve my character. And I did a lot of crazy things. I ended up living in a holistic community in Greece. And I say this is like one of the most challenging things that you can do, because it's like living with so many different people from so many different backgrounds and environments. And holistic community is all about living in harmony, living in alignment with nature. So there I was able to learn, how to relate authentically, how to communicate consciously, how to be radically honest yet compassionate. And these are such missing skills in the world, which help us to create unity and connection rather than separation. So I feel like that was a pivotal moment in my journey, because I was able to become an instrument of life happening through me. And rather than like, I need to, of course I went to university, I got the job, I was the corporate saleswoman, as I said, but then really being like, okay, how can I let life flow through me without, all of those stories of like, you have to have the family, you have to buy the house, you have to do all of this by X amount of age. And it led me to Bali, to Indonesia, again, to just experiencing and trying things out, because if I never tried, I would never know. And I was able to, find an incredible business partner, create a yoga school, and really be able to share what I believe with the world. And this helps us to reconnect to the nature of who we truly are. So my life it's definitely about learning and having that knowledge, but then putting it to practice, like actually doing the steps, implementing, having the action, and then being like, okay, what did I learn and how am I going to share this with other people?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think yeah, thank you. No, beautiful, beautiful way. And thank you so much for sharing that with us. I love every time I hear personal stories. So yeah, I think it's challenging when we have to comprise or summarize all what we have been through and our learnings, our growth, our experiences into one single answer. So I'm sure more will come. But one question that came up for me that I'm sure probably people will be asking themselves. I was really interested by what you said on experiential wisdom. So is the wisdom that we acquire by the challenges and the things that we go through. So what's that point, mainly to explain people where you go through challenges, where you integrate the learnings, where you say, okay, this is something, this is some wisdom I can share with the world, this is wisdom I can share with others. Because I'm sure what happens is, before we are really aware of our being, our experiences, the learnings and the integrations that we embody when we go through those situations, there's this is proximity bias, which is how I call, when we go through those experiences, we don't really know how powerful it is, or is this something that other people go through, is this normal? So how can people recognize when they go through their own challenges, they gain wisdom from those challenges and learnings, okay, this is something I can share with the world, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I feel like we tend to underestimate our own experience and how relatable it is. And essentially, we are all connected, and it can be something so simple. So I also facilitate breathwork journeys, and a huge part of that is creating a safe container to express ourselves. And when I was living in the holistic community, every single day, we would come together as a group and we would have a sharing circle. And the sharing circle was not a place to get solutions, to have answers, to receive feedback, to be interrupted, anything. It was just a safe space to express what is present within you now. And I realized through that process of like months on end of just turning inwards and asking myself, what is present? Because it could be, someone else's turn in the circle and I'm not listening to them fully. I'm not present with them because I'm going through my own mind of like, oh, I want to sound intelligent. I want to say something philosophical. How am I feeling? And really, when I realize it gets to my turn and all of those thoughts and stories that I had looping in the background, none of them are relevant, even, seconds after I've thought them. So it's really coming back to the present moment and just having that internal inquiry and knowing that it can be something so simple. And even if it's, the healing happens and starts from within. So if I'm thinking like, what am I going to share with people that could have an impact? first I just have to focus on like, what am I going to share for myself? Because that's where the healing starts. And just having that space to express our own voice authentically, that can be the medicine. That can be enough. And we don't need to focus on who that's affecting or how many people that's impacting. But if I can just show up for myself in the present moment and be like, I'm feeling heaviness, or I'm feeling anger, I feel some rage moving through my body, that's
Yeah.
powerful, and that's enough.
Wow, yes. And it's also like coming back to what you said, is being present with ourselves, with our bodies, and what is happening within us when we go through those experiences. And something you mentioned is when we are to focus on our own experience and are not able to be present with other people's experiences, is what we are not allowing ourselves to take in the the lesson, or to fully be in the experience of human experience by being present in every moment, which I know is hard in every moment. But the more you practice connection with the self, mindfulness, and all the amazing different techniques like spirituality, you can come back to that inner knowing, that inner wisdom. And at the end of the day, I guess it just comes back to being our most authentic selves as much as we can. And that requires presence, that requires mindfulness, that requires being in the present moment. So yeah, I think that was a very powerful way to put it. So in the realm of relationships and human design, we often hear about the transformative power of personal experiences. So could you share a significant moment in your own journey that led you to a profound learning or realization about yourself?
Yeah, this is great because yeah, all of my like relationships are really such an insight into our, our deepest shadows, our greatest fears, the biggest challenges that we're here to overcome. And I've absolutely been through those. I think we all go through intense relationships, and they are essentially that mirror into ourselves. How can we show up in our higher self? And of course, we're going to get triggered. We're going to react rather than respond. We all have those moments. And yeah, I think all of my relationships have helped me to grow. And I always like to say that connection is my currency, and it's my greatest teacher as well. And when I started to realize that the relationships I was attracting into my life were a reflection of, the role models that I grew up with, my idea of, what is a healthy masculine? What is a healthy feminine? How do I perceive these? I was able to see and like be like, okay. So like my soul chose these experiences for me, not to me. I'm not a victim to these experiences, because, we can go through life being like, oh, that happened to me. That was horrible. That person did this. And like, yes, of course, but we're never going to evolve unless we take full responsibility for our role. Like there's the one common denominator within all of our relationships, and essentially that is us, right?
Yes.
So it takes a degree of self-awareness. And it's interesting because all of the relationships that I've had, I was able to, and I've done a lot of reflection recently going into my inner masculine, my inner feminine. And because it doesn't really matter about who the relationship is with, it's what is it showing about myself, because it's all a mirror. And I was like looking at my the relationships that I had and seeing, okay, so I was kind of being the version of the feminine that I grew up, which was maybe being quite assertive, being very strong, being very dominant, emotionally volatile. And to like actually look at myself and be like, wow, like I am being those qualities. And why am I attracting a masculine that is unemotional or avoidant or doesn't know how to handle my feminine emotionality? And taking responsibility for that. And then, really going in and reparenting myself and being like, okay, this is what I saw, but this doesn't have to be my reality. I can choose a different narrative. I can accept what I have been like grown up with. Like some of us grow up in really volatile situations. I was relatively lucky, but then I did see these patterns coming up of, the masculine being avoidant or not understanding the spectrum of emotions. And I would be very volatile, which it was that process to become comfortable with my emotions so it wouldn't explode in an unhealthy way. And the more that we do that inner work and look at how we are contributing to every situation that we've been through, then we can take our power back. Mm-hmm. Then we can, develop that toolkit of how we want to show up, who we want to attract in our life, and not let history repeat itself. We can be the change, essentially. So
yeah, breaking the
it's
patterns, and it's breaking the patterns and the generational trauma as well that we've been carrying on and on and on. And I feel like thank to also our previous generations, because they did the hard work of getting ourselves, this generation, out of survival mode, because back then the situations in life were more difficult, like finding jobs, and just trauma was more present back then. So now our generations, I feel we are learning to just come out from survival mode, which means coming back to connection with ourselves, that this connection that happened in childhood that I was mentioning, that's what all this spirituality work. And even whatever the person believes on, it doesn't need to be exactly spirituality, it can be many ways, but coming back to yourself and the connection. So I think that one is really interesting, and also the part of having that moment of self-awareness and understanding, and okay, wait a minute, like there's a common denominator on all my challenges, and that's me. So I also feel that it's only when we are ready to embark on the journey that this self-awareness comes up. Because if people are still unaware of all these things, it means that they are not ready to embark on the journey. It requires a lot of courage. It requires a lot of accountability, responsibility. It is painful because we have to go through grieving the things that we didn't have, or we have to grieve aspects of ourselves that we really didn't love. We also have to grieve parts of ourselves that we didn't enjoy being, like those aspects where maybe we were also the toxic person. So I always say, when people blame, oh, but my partner is toxic, I'm like, well, if they are toxic and you're with them, doesn't that make you toxic too? Because otherwise, why are you with them? So that it takes courage to be, probably I am also the person who needs to point the finger back at me and start to see where I can take my power back. And it's all this beautiful journey that we have embarked ourselves on. So what would you say was probably, let's go back to the context of relationships. And I know it's hard to maybe pick one, but if just pick the one that comes intuitively to you, what will be your biggest lesson from one of your romantic relationships about yourself?
Oh, wow. Ready for the vulnerability. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
ready. Let's go deep into it now.
totally. Like, and I feel like, I grew up being so independent, but then I also needed that connection from other people. And I had a very, transformative, toxic, intense relationship where it showed me all of my shit, where I wasn't stepping up, where I wasn't upholding, boundaries. And it was really like, okay, like I have abandoned myself here, and that's my responsibility. And I realized that I needed to become okay with all my emotions. So I was always, people know me as like this ray of sunshine, this positive person, but I've only been able to get to that stage through actually honoring and embracing the opposite. So being alone, like I was always in relationships from when I was 17. I was in 2 years, then 4 years, then 4.5 years. I was never alone, and I just would naturally like attract the next person. It was always easy for me, and I had to go through that process of being alone and looking at my darkness, looking at my shadows, looking at where I, gravitate towards pleasure and all of those positive emotions, but where I was avoiding the pain, the discomfort, and, numbing them, suppressing them, which we all do. Of course, it's easier to go out and have a cocktail with the girls than to sit with your discomfort and your pain and your upset. But like realizing that the path to our liberation and our most joyful self actually is a journey of going through the mess and through the darkness, but like loving ourselves in that process. How can we look at the shadows, the parts of ourselves that we would rather keep swept under the carpet because, we put these in, we sweep these under the carpet because when we're a child, it wasn't safe to express these qualities. It might have jeopardized our lovability. Therefore, we changed ourselves and we hid these parts of ourselves. So as an adult, we can go back into those situations because as a child, of course, we didn't have the tools. We didn't have the capacity to process those experiences. And therefore, we put stories onto them. This happened, therefore I'm not lovable, therefore I will become abandoned, whatever it is. So yeah, like I attracted those relationships, and that relate like a specific very intense relationship because I was ready to go through the shit and the darkness and experience that so that I could become the strong, powerful woman that I am, so that I could help other people also become that without getting stuck in that victimhood of, I deserve this. This is happening
Oh,
to
look what
me.
happened to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And something that I also have seen a lot with my clients is that the victim mentality at the end, at the root of having a victim mentality pattern, is trying to get the need for love, belonging, and acceptance met. So when you show compassion to yourself, also when you have these patterns, is like, again, what you were saying is like really bringing love and compassion to every single part of ourselves. Like I was even talking about addiction in my previous podcast and how Gabor Mate says, to be honest, what addiction at the end, at the root of addiction is trying to get that need for soothing and peace, because it is so painful without the substance that it just gets too much to live life. So we all have we are all trying to meet some needs when we have some patterns, even when on a conscious way we understand that they are not serving us. So this is like really powerful as well. It's just coming back to having that ownership and responsibility with love and compassion. And another thing that came to my mind, and it's actually a video I did recently just before recording the podcast, was love and disconnection cannot coexist. So a way for coming back to connection with the self is by actually bringing love to those parts of yourself that you have been repressing, that you have been avoiding, that you have been hiding. The more you continue to do that, the more disconnection you will experience with the world, with yourself, sorry. And then when you are in disconnection with yourself, you are in disconnection with the world. So coming back to the mirror part, life is full of wisdom. So we will attract the situations that will show us those aspects of ourselves that we've been avoiding, or those parts of ourselves that need love and attention, those wounds that are ready to be healed. So I think it's very beautiful, the journey that we both been embarking on. Yeah,
Yeah, and
lots of
we
wisdom.
never experience anything that we can't handle. Like, you know, if you look at the point where you're at now, it's because you got through everything that came your way. You overcome those challenges, and that's what gives you depth. That's what gives you character. That's what allows you to be the version of you that you are now, because you showed up during those uncomfortable situations.
Yeah, and I think is probably like also trusting the wisdom of your own journey, because what happens sometimes is people might be listening to us, right? And it's like, oh, how do I get to be in that position where I'm able to be self-aware of my patterns, where I'm able to take action, where I'm able to heal? How can I start connecting more with myself? It's just ask the powerful questions yourself, and the world, life, the wisdom of life will bring you the teachers that you need, will bring you the situations, the experiences. But because sometimes we want to grow, we want to experience evolution, but then we are complaining why we are going through challenges. And the only way to forge character and strengthening courage and accountability is by having the situations that will trigger and will actually call you to develop those characteristics more. So there's no way of going through an evolution and growth without having to go through the situations, through the challenges that will actually shape you into the person that you have to be to hold those desires. Yeah, so what's your view on that, or anything that you will want to share on that?
Yeah. And unfortunately, I'm so sorry to break it to you, but there is no quick fix. And we have to be in the process, in the actual journey, which is happening in the present moment, rather than being like, I need to get to this destination. So we all, someone asked me the other day, like, oh, how long before I'm healed? And it's like, I'm sorry, like, maybe many lifetimes, but we're
Yeah,
kind of like, in this mentality that we need to heal ourselves, that we need to fix ourselves, we need to become whole. But what if nothing was ever really broken, and it was essentially that we disconnected ourselves from love, which is our essence? So relating back to what you were saying, and when we separate ourselves from our wholeness, we're essentially creating those stories from our experiences. We make something mean more than it actually was. We make it mean something about who we are as a person, when, we can take our power back by being like, okay, like, so a memory without emotion becomes wisdom. The only thing that makes us suffer or extend our suffering is because we become so emotionally attached to the stories of what happened to me and what I make that mean. And, I love the mind. And sometimes, like, because in human design, we have what's called an inner authority. And this is our decision-making strategy. And most of us go through life thinking that all of our decisions are made from the mind. And human design tells us that no decisions are made from the mind. We have this innate intelligence and inner wisdom of the body, and that's how we need to make decisions. So if we can sort of look at ourselves from these different perspectives of like, okay, I have a mind, I have a body, and I have this consciousness that's aware of all of these things operating together,
yeah,
then we can discern, like, do I want to believe that story that my mind is telling me? Or is this story actually conflicting what I want? So, is this essentially a limiting belief that is repeating based on something that's happened in my past that I am kind of bringing into my present moment and then also recreating that in my future? So we can take that step back, have that self-awareness and be like, okay, my mind is creating the story, but it's not actually helping me. How can I change that? What do I want to believe instead? What is my body telling me is true if I really tap into it? Because our mind, as beautiful it is for like analyzing and processing information, it's not here to guide the decisions of our life. We're here to listen to our gut. We're here to connect to our heart and the wisdom of our body. So if we have that disconnection, from the neck down, we're missing all of the information that our body is here to tell us. So
yeah, totally. And this is when we start also experiencing then our body sending signals through physical sensation, through physical pain. And even when we don't really even acknowledge those sensations or those emotions on the body, it can become a disease. So I'm actually reading a book now on how every single pain that we go through in our body is a sign for the body to actually send like a message to us.
Psychosomatic, connecting the mind with the body.
Exactly, the somatics, and Ella and myself, we are both somatic informed. So I'm somatic trauma informed therapist. So the one part here that you mentioned is recreating the stories, and I think it's important to maybe mention that we will recreate the stories according to our subconscious beliefs. So your life will bring you the situations that will reinforce those beliefs. This is why it's so important to, as you said, ask yourself, what is the story I'm telling myself? And the second one is having that self-awareness that only comes with connecting more with your body.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, it's all really like very much interrelated. And sometimes like it doesn't matter where you start in your journey, this work I feel like is divinely guided by God or a universe or the source, whoever you believe, because it's just I've seen it with my own journey and my clients. It's just always brings you exactly the information that you need, and it always like unfolds as how it should unfold. It's just beautiful, yeah, natural, and is very, very powerful because it's just, yeah, rediscovering parts of ourselves that when we reconnect, we start seeing life from different lenses. And it's all about the emotion and how we feel. Is learning that nothing externally will make you feel happy as long as you are not happy from within. So everything starts from the self. And I know we said that you are a human design mentor, so I want to touch on a little bit into this topic so people can also understand how human design like interacts with all these topics of healing and manifestation and relationships. So can you give us in the context that we've been talking about, like a little bit of an explanation about human design?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, it's like a combination of all of these different tools that creates a roadmap of who we are and what our sole purpose is. It shares our gifts, our strengths, our weaknesses, how we interact with other people in the world. And it just reminds us who we are and that we can be exactly who we were born to be. And yeah, so I really love using human design also as a way into understanding who we are, because when we can understand who we are, then we take our power back. And it's not a quick fix, of course, because it's an experiment. So it's a living experiment. You have to slow down and take that sacred pause and actually contemplate the information.
Yeah.
It's, you know, we are human beings, and it's basically describing our humanness, and that we're all here to be imperfect and love ourselves through that. And when I, you know, share human design with my clients, I'm not telling them anything new that doesn't already exist within them, but maybe it's these parts that they forgot or that may have been lost. And then it's like, okay, I can embrace these qualities more. These are my strengths. I can actually shine these to the world. So, you know, we all have auras, right? This is our energetic field. And I'm not talking, you know, woo-woo spirituality. Quantum physics shows that our heart has a resonance. We emit a frequency. And in a really practical sense, when we enter into a room, like I'm sure you've felt this, that you feel someone's energy before they've even opened their mouth, before they've even spoken a word. So energy exists. We are all made up of energy, and human design gives us a way to sort of understand this. It's a knowledge system and a tool for differentiating ourselves, reminding us that we are all unique, multifaceted beings. And with this information, with this knowledge, we can then put it into practice and see how it works for us. So it's not just like, hey, this is the information, and then you don't go and do anything with it. It's like, okay, your strategy for making decisions is to respond to life and follow your gut. And then if that resonates within your body and you're like, yes, then you're like, okay, now I have a strategy. I don't need to always go into that doubt and that second guessing of the mind. Or, you know, half of the world have what's called emotional authority, where they need to ride this emotional wave before they make a decision. And because I looked at your human design before our as well, so one thing that we share in common is that we both have open emotional center. So essentially that means that we can take in energy and the emotions of other people. So half of the world have this consistent emotional wave, and they're very sure of their emotions.
Yeah.
And the other half of the world is very open, and they're very empathic, taking in the emotions of others.
Yeah.
And we have this information, then we can empower ourselves and be like, okay, I'm going to, you know, disconnect from someone else because I'm feeling very intensely their energy. I'm going to come into my body, come into my breath, and ask myself, like, is this my energy, or am I reacting because it feels very foreign to me?
Yeah.
Because, you know, so for us with the open emotional center, if we're not aware of that, we can like take it in, and then we're like, I don't know what to do with this. So we amplify and we double it back. So we're just like, we double it. And, you know, this is when conflict arises. This is when we go into our animal brain and we just become these emotional, reactive, volatile creatures, and nothing gets resolved in a heightened emotional state, right? So we need to come back to that calmness within.
Yeah. So how would you tell a person, if they are listening to us, how can they start working in that emotionally volatile phases?
So when emotions are heightened, it's really about coming back into your own energy. So separating yourself from what is bringing that reaction, and not projecting it onto the other person, because we're all very good at you know, blaming and shaming and saying, you made me feel this way.
Yeah.
But being like, actually, I'm feeling a heightened emotional state, and it's not a good time to resolve this conflict. I need to take my space. And that's upholding a boundary. That's honoring your needs so that you don't say something that you might regret.
Beautiful. And I totally like, this is such a powerful part. Like, that's why I want to add onto what you said, which was beautiful, which is the part of really recognizing what is yours and what is not, because this is where the codependency comes. It's like we are not able to really understand and identify, wait a minute, this is not even mine, why am I reacting? So it's being able to hold space for someone when they're going through emotions without you taking on those emotions. Like is learning that it's not our responsibility to take on other people's emotions, and allowing them to go through their own journey by holding a space for them and having that compassion. So I even heard recently that they are trying to shift this from, instead of being empathetic, is more like being compassionate, because sometimes when you are empathetic person, you can even feel the emotions of others, even though if you know that they are not yours. So this actually happens to me quite a lot. And I'm a very empathetic person, and I guess like coaches, we have that in common. Otherwise,
And
it
your
would be
human
hard to
design.
be. Yeah, yeah, it will be hard to be a coach without being empathetic. So yeah, is learning to have that separation of, I trust you will be able to deal. You have everything within yourself to deal with these emotional challenges you are going through. I'm here to support you. I'm here for you to know that there's someone, like there's that connection, that support, that co-regulation if the person needs it. However, letting them go through their own journey without us interfering and becoming codependent on the emotion. So I think that part was really nice to mention. And the last question I wanted to ask you is, if someone wants to start their journey or embark on the human design journey and get to know themselves a little bit better, how can they start that journey?
Yeah, definitely. And it is about experiencing the journey and starting it for yourself. And firstly, I would just say to download your human design chart. There's so many different free apps, different website platforms where you can download that. I share a lot of, basic information on my Instagram, Authentic with Ella. But it's really having that willingness to begin and wanting to understand yourself on a deeper level, and wanting to have these different tools, because everyone resonates with a different tool. And even with human design, for me, it took me many years to like fully embrace it. I was like, oh, it looks a bit confusing, it looks a bit, it's all too much, it's a little bit too masculine, and so much information. So trust your journey, is because it's not linear. There's no this is the set journey, but trusting that it'll come to you when it's meant to, which it always does. And then like reaching out to me, asking questions, starting to do your own research, see what feels right. You can get a basic reading, which will give you the foundations of your human design type, because there's 5 different types. Your human design profile, there's like 12 different profiles, and
Wow, 12.
so there's all these different facets. But you just got to start like layer by layer. Like first you master your type. So are you here to be a guide? Are you here to initiate? Are you here to respond to life? And when you realize which one's you, then you can live in your highest expression. Because so say for ourselves, I'm a generator and you're a manifesting generator, which essentially is the majority of the world. This is 70% of the population make up generators and manifesting generators, and they are here to respond to life. So you're meant to be in this state of satisfaction. So if you're not feeling satisfied with life, then you're probably feeling frustrated. You're pushing up against walls. And it's realizing, okay, what's bringing me frustration? What's bringing me bitterness? What's bringing me anger? What's making me feel disappointed? And getting more into like, what is the high expression of my type? Because I'm meant to feel successful. I'm meant to feel satisfied. I'm meant to feel peace and delight and all of these expressions. So yeah, it's just one of those tools for knowing who we are and coming back to that space of who we were born to be. And
yeah, it's so there's so many different like beautiful ways of growing and rediscovering yourself and healing and embarking in this journey of well, could we call it? Maybe just rediscovering coming back to your core being and your most authentic self. So if you resonate with human design, feel free to reach out to Ella and just trust your journey. Like we always receive the information that we need in order to evolve in our journey. So it will come to you if you start being more inquisitive on this journey, if you are interested. And as I said, asking yourself those powerful questions and let life just bring you through the journey. So if people would like to reach out to you, Ella, how can they contact you? I think you mentioned your Instagram account, right?
Yeah, I'm definitely very present on Instagram. I have some free ebooks to actually help you start in your human design journey, whether you're, a single woman looking to attract deeply satisfying love, or if you are wanting to understand your partner. I have an ebook about that because, realizing that we're all fundamentally different and we have different strategies to relate to one another. So that's a big one. And yeah, I do master classes every now and then. I have a free one coming up, so that's exciting. But yeah, mostly via Instagram is a great touch point to begin your journey with human design, with all of these beautiful modalities that bring us home to ourselves, as you mentioned.
Beautiful. So I will put all your details also in the podcast description. So for whoever would like to touch base with Ella, you can do so, and you can check the details on the podcast. So before we close, just in a few minutes, if you can give to the audience your 3 key takeaways from the podcast.
Oh, I think that you just have to be yourself, essentially. There's no linear journey to healing, and there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. Essentially, it's about coming home to the version of you that you were born to be, knowing that that's fundamentally different from everyone else, and that's perfect and beautiful. And yeah, just really removing all of those layers that stop you being the authentic version that you were born to be.
Beautiful. Amazing. Love that. And the one I will leave people with is probably I keep resonating with this message today, which is love and disconnection cannot coexist at the same time. So for you to come back to connection with your core being, with your true essence, with the most loving, powerful, capable, limitless being that you really are, is starting to love yourself fully. And I know this love yourself and self-love movement might sometimes sounds a little bit cliche, but is actually a deeper way of seeing it. It's not only just saying beautiful affirmations and just go to the gym. It's actually going deeper into the aspects of yourself that you've been repressing, your shadows, your subconscious beliefs that are blocking you, limiting you. So it's all this is part of that love and really coming back to who you really are and rediscovering your true essence. So
Yeah,
thank you
it's a
so much, Ella. Yeah, what did you say? Sorry, it's a practice.
practice.
Yeah, that's it. It's a practice, it's a journey. And yeah, feel free to reach out to Ella or myself if you would like to deep dive on these topics, have any questions, work with us. You specialize in human design and relationships, Ella, right?
Yes, correct. And I have a program to help women attract and call in deeply satisfying love. I work with a lot of women that are on their spiritual journey and looking for guidance to come back to their most authentic selves.
Beautiful, beautiful. And as you know, I'm a somatic trauma practitioner and focus on emotional healing, mindset work to manifest a conscious relationship as well. So we have a lot of things in common with Ella, and I will be launching a new masterclass at the end of August about balancing feminine and masculine energy so you can attract your conscious partner. So yeah, it was a pleasure again to be with you all. Thank you so much, Ella. Again, it's been a pleasure and an honor to have you here.
Thank you so much.
All right. I will see you all soon. See ya.